This is a production of KMmedia.pro. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So come on over into our world. I know you'll like it, because on today's show, Anne Scottlin, and she has been on the show before. She's going to be with us. She is the coach of Live for Joy. Anne Scottlin is, she's an actress. She's a coach. She's a live coach, not a dead coach. She takes care of people. She's really is an extraordinary human being. And this is her 5th time on my show. And she is just really a phenomenal human being, and she figured out how to get here. But if you want to go look at past episodes, you can go to positivetalkradio.net, and you can listen to episode 119 or 148 or 181 or 202, and this will be 334 on the radio show / podcast. And Anne, thank you for finding your way.
Yay! Yes. Well, I came through the same door twice, and somehow the second time worked. So, yay! It's
amazing. I get asked to go through the door many times, and oftentimes I'm not allowed to. But you've also written a book called Live for Joy, and by the way, you sent me a copy, and I have it here. This is a beautiful book. You really worked hard, and it's a hardback. This is one of those books, and the way it's written, and that I would put on my coffee table when friends were coming over, so that they could just thumb through it and they could have look at some of the things in here. It really is a beautiful book.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, a lot of tender loving care went into that. I hand selected every illustration and photo and piece of artwork, and yeah, a phenomenal amount of time. But do you feel like it supports the messages?
Oh, absolutely.
Yay. Oh, I'm so glad.
I love because what it is it's got a saying and it's got a picture on the other side of the page, and the pictures are beautiful and the sayings are dynamic and they can really help people. And since you've been on the show so much, and I was thinking about this, you've been on the show enough that I would really like to get deep, go deep into the art of joy. So I guess the first question I would have for you is, what is the difference between joy and happiness?
Ooh, good question. I get asked that all the time. So happiness is great, right? But happiness is binary. Either you are happy or you kind of aren't happy. You can't be in the middle, really. Either are or you aren't.
And I'll tell you, it's like yesterday. At one point in the day, I was extremely happy because my Mariners were winning 4-0. And I was doing a little dance in my house and just really enjoying that. And then it became 4-2. So then I sat down and was less happy. And then it got to be 6-2. And then I was happy again. And then it got to be 7-2, and then I was really happy. And then they scored 3, and then they scored 3 more, and we lost the game. And I lost my happiness, and it was sad.
So sad. Yes, no, but that's such a great illustration, right? Because happiness is kind of that bumpy ride, up and down, up and down. I mean, and we're kind of told, what happiness is supposed to mean. We've grown up with sort of these commercial influences, media and television and film influence. If your team wins, you're happy. If they're not, you're sad. If you get the right significant other, you're happy, or the right job or the right house or the right car or the right clothes to wear, as opposed to, so either you are happy or you aren't. Well, the problem with that, as we know, is that once that one happiness is achieved, so the brand new car someone might have bought in 2000 and made them so happy, it may not be making them quite as happy anymore.
Exactly. The older it gets, and then you look at somebody else who's got a newer car, and so happiness is kind of fleeting. It isn't sustainable because we don't choose for it to be sustainable.
Well, and I don't know that we sit down and, intentionally articulate that, like, I don't want it to be sustainable, but I think it's the way we understand it. Now, and let's be clear too. So happiness and joy are first cousins. So we don't want to just kind of completely confuse everything, because sometimes they have some overlap. But I like to, since I talk so much about joy, kind of create the distinguishing question which you asked. So joy is a little different, because joy is more less surface and more deep. It's more of an organic, gut level sense of personal well-being that continues whether your team wins or loses, or that can continue even if it's a bumpy emotional ride on the surface of the lake, those waves on the top or on the Puget Sound when they get all whipped up, right? But deep underneath, it's much more still. And that's sort of where joy lives, in that spot, which it's much more grounding. I think we were all born with joy, organic, original joy. I think it's a human birthright. When you see a little baby or a toddler laughing and giggling and screaming or playing and just having so much fun, they don't really understand yet the concepts of, do they have the latest car and how nice is their baby stroller? They are really just being joyful from this intrinsic, organic place where they're celebrating life. And to me, that's where joy starts, that organic place, that kind of right each one of us has to human beings. We can't predict the perfect life, but we can choose to connect to that part of us that is grounded and well.
How do you, because there's somebody out there is asking the question, okay, Anne, that's great. I know that you had a wonderful life and it's been perfect and everything, which, by the way, I know that that's not the case. But at the same time, and by the way, you can go back to some of those older episodes and we can, because we do talk about that a great little bit. But so it's not a matter of that it's just a circumstance of your life that everything is cupcakes and roses and you're happy all the time. And you got joy in your heart. That's actually, isn't it even a skill to learn how to do that?
To tap into your joy.
Yeah, to understand that even though life has its ups and downs, mm-hmm. things are not going to always be perfect, but you can choose how you are going to respond to those things that happen in life, and you can maintain your level of joy that transcends the events that happen in your life. And does that work?
50-50.
Oh, okay.
So here's the thing. I don't necessarily think that it's a skill. Now, it can be a practice that gets easier with time. And if you want to define that as a skill, that's true too. I think, honestly, it's easier than a skill. Because once we start talking about cultivating a new skill, it's like, oh, God, I have to learn a different kind of sit-ups? Really? Then I'll be happy? Okay, I don't know. It's more of an awareness, really. Like creating awareness around what brings you joy and keeping that in you when those surface things go up and down. So, living in a beautiful state with a beautiful mountain and a beautiful ocean, there's probably things in nature that for many, many of us are very grounded. I was born in Renton. This is like my home stomping grounds. And being in nature is very grounding. So to me, this is just an illustration. For me, this is one of the things that creates a lot of joy in me. It gives me peace. It makes me feel connected. It makes me feel happy. It helps me forget kind of the hustle and bustle. And it doesn't really matter in that moment when you're just sitting looking out over the sound or listening to the seagulls or just breathing in the air. You're just not really thinking about, how much money I have in the bank right now and what bills I have to pay and am I happy or am I not happy? It's more, in this moment, I am well. It's a lot about being present, really. Joy is a lot about learning to be present in the moment.
I think everybody in life, at least everybody that I know, has gone through and there was a period of time that I went through it, and I call it my bad country music song period. And it was, my wife left, I lost my house, my dad died, my dog died, I got sued for $50,000, I hit a bridge with a truck, and, it was like going on and on and on. And even through all of that, I maintained a level of happiness, and because I hit the bridge at 35 miles an hour and I didn't die. I thought that was pretty good personally, and stuff. So it is. Are some of us just naturally more joyful than others?
Well, that's a really good question. And according to science, new neuroscience really, and psychological studies, it is true that some of us have a predisposition to be happier or sad, to kind of go dark or light. We all know some of those kind of people, in the world that just, you see these people that, like, no matter what happens to them, they're just so bubbly and it's almost annoying. and
I'm one of those, I'm afraid. Yeah.
And then me too. And then you see others, but this is variable too, because I wouldn't say this has been true throughout my life. Then there's others that you see that just, it even doesn't matter if they have all the right toys or all the right things. They just seem to be a miserable son of a something all the time. Like, no matter what, they're just so angry and so miserable, and you can tell that they really don't have joy. Well, there is some hereditary factors. There are chemical factors in each individual, and your chemical makeup can affect your quote unquote happiness or joy. The good news is that it can be taught. You can learn if you wish to be happy, and some people don't. Kevin, did you know that?
I did, and it drives me crazy. I don't like those. I don't like being around people who choose not to be happy.
Well, it becomes an identity for some people,
That's true. It does.
It's literally like, this is who I am, and this is how everyone knows me. And, it's kind of like becoming the celebrity of your own life. And people they kind of hear you coming. And even people who they dread you coming, you still have an impact. And people get kind of addicted to that, that impact, that wave they create when they come around. But is that really worth it, spending your whole life, just having a reputation and feeling like you have this little tiny bit of power, but really being miserable all the time? I know people who really, let's just put it this way, they practice being miserable all the time because their life, I witness, their life is variable. Good things happen, bad things happen, better things happen. The sun comes out and they're still bitter and just choose to be in this, oh, poor me, everything, I'm a victim space. And those are, I like to help people and encourage them to pop out of that. But you can only do it if you want to, surprisingly.
That is true, by the way. And by the way, we're talking with Anne Scottlin, and she is a dynamic coach, and she helps people find joy in work and in play and in just generally in their life. And so if you'd like to, if you're driving up 405 and you're driving at 5 miles an hour, by the way, that's a freeway, and you're driving at 5 miles an hour and you're just not getting where you want to go and you're feeling a little down, why don't you give us a call and you can talk to Anne, and let me give you the phone numbers, which is 425-373-5527 or 888-298-5569. And Anne's got over 100,000 followers on Twitter. How'd you do that?
Oh, wow. It takes a lot of effort. It's not all spontaneous.
I didn't know you had 100,000 friends. That's pretty good.
Right? Yeah. So, no, it's just, providing good content on an ongoing basis and taking care of it, just like any other part of your business. You have to take care of it, keep it healthy, keep it organic. Don't be like paying people for followers and all that kind of crap. You have to actually, have a legitimate organic following. But I love it. And I love talking to all my followers on there. And, in many ways, that's how the book was born. Part of the way the book was born, because all the contents of the book, which appears sort of like quotes and passages, but they are all original. They're all original. And most of it was tested on my followers over many years. And getting their feedback and getting their comments and finding the ones that really resonated. And that's eventually what's turned into this 12 chapter, 280 page book. So that's where that came from. And just getting to know what people were needed and wanted, and being willing to have a philosophical conversation about some of the basic things in life that, people just don't want to talk about. Like, what does it take to have courage? What does it take to find joy? How do you admit when you're wrong? How do you decide that joy might be more important to your life than being right all the time? Things like that.
Well, if you're a politician in this country, the way it is these days, you've been taught. It has to be taught that you're never wrong, that you're always right. And if you are wrong and somebody calls you on it, you just skate away. You do what was it? Little Whorehouse in Texas, where he would do that Texas two-step and step away from trouble whenever he could, because it takes, and you're right, it takes a certain amount of courage to admit that you're not perfect and that occasionally you make a mistake.
Or just that you're not right, and that, sometimes we have such an agenda. We think that our personhood, our selfhood, is only distinguished by the fact that we have a stronger opinion about something than someone else, where we don't realize that, just being in the moment, to being at peace, learning to listen more. Now, that's not that we all have to have our warriors. Can I say that? Warrior, the warriors. Okay. In every society, we all have to have warriors, right? So we're going to have those people on the front lines that, they fight for specific things, and this is why. They have a reason. But we don't all have to fight all the time. Just because we're a democracy doesn't mean we have to fight all the time. In fact, if we would spend more time looking at the commonalities between us and our neighbors and people in other parts of the country and people of other parts of the world, we discover they are really so much more like ourselves than we have ever let ourselves think. And when you realize you have actually a lot more friends than you thought, life can be a little better.
It really can be if you recognize that we are all, one of the things that I say is that we are all one. We're all part of the same place. We come from the same energy. Yep. And there's much more commonality between us than there is differences. For
sure.
And the differences that we come up with are sometimes differences that we manufacture because we don't want them to be like us, or we're scared of the other or different groups and that kind of stuff. But that really doesn't serve us very well.
Well, in ancient times, we were much more of a collective society. Everything was done for, even the way the laws were written in ancient times was pretty much either for the good of the monarch or the good of the whole, if it was a, somewhat healthy state. It was, if someone steps out of line, it's not good for the whole, so we're going to take care of that. That's why punishment was often very brutal. But we've kind of changed our mindset. We no longer have a dictatorship. We no longer have a theocracy, meaning for most of us that God is at the top of the political pyramid. We have this belief, and partly as Americans, we often say we have this right to our individual freedom, to opinion, to state our opinions freely, which is a huge and wonderful gift. I think it's been abused to a certain extent, where we have decided that we have to be so individualistic that everything has to be friction at the expense of society as a whole, at the expense of relationships, at the expense of family friendships and close, people that are close to us. So I don't say that, you can't have a great opinion about something, but sometimes just weighing it, is it worth it? It's like gossip. Sometimes it might be kind of sort of harmless, and other times it really doesn't make you feel good either. You just get that crappy feeling like, I shouldn't have said that about so-and-so. And it's like, is it really worth that, 2 minutes of indulgence at the office? And then just kind of like, it really wasn't worth it. And I really feel like I let someone down that I know and that I care about. So, picking and choosing, I think, is a big part of learning to find your joy and live in it on a more regular basis.
I got to ask you, but first, before I do that, I got to do this. If you want to give her a call, first of all, if you want to go to AnneScottlin.com, you can find out all the information about her. That's with 2 T's, by the way. So Scottlin.com, and you can find out all the information about her. But give us a call if you have something that's on your mind. If this is resonating with you in any way, shape, or form, give us a call and let's talk about it. 425-373-5527 or 888-298-56 5569. Now, I went through all of that, and then I totally forgot what I was going to ask you.
Well, that's okay, because I was going to have a comment anyway, Kevin. I was just going to say, so one of the things that we sometimes do with callers is, if you have a particular challenge, I'm a certified life and business coach. I'm a writer, a speaker. I work with groups, workshops. I do a lot of private coaching. In fact, I'm opening up a new coaching program right now, and retreats. So what I love to do is work with people, especially one-on-one, to kind of thought partner with them and find what are some possible solutions to those who are open to finding new solutions to having more emotional wellness, to choosing to have a more joyful life. So if you have any questions about that, or if you have, just want to challenge my thinking, I say, call in, bring it on. I love it.
So I got to ask you then, in my previous life, before I did this, which I dearly love and am joyful in it pretty much every day, but I was in the corporate world, and a lot of times I had a, how do you say it nicely? I had a boss who was less than somebody that I would choose to go have a beer with or even talk to if I didn't have to. But there's nothing that I could do about that. And I had to figure out a way to make it work for me. How do you teach folks that are in that? Because that happens a lot, I think. Mm-hmm. How do you teach people that are in a situation like that to get through it?
Yeah, no, that's a really big challenge, and it's a real challenge. And I think, the first question to ask, and I am not a therapist, so we'll make that clear too, just so everyone knows that. The first thing to ask is this somehow an abusive situation that I need to take seriously? Or do I just can't stand this person? Like, there is a difference.
And there is. I've got a gentleman that we no longer obviously work together, but I thought I'd pull this out as an example just because. But I was his assistant. This is in the restaurant business. He was a general manager, and he thought being a general manager was all that in a bag of chips, and thought he was really, really cool, and that he was mean to the staff and mean to the people that we were working with. And I was expected, in his mind, to support everything that he did, everything that he said, even though in my heart of hearts I knew that it was just dead wrong. But he wasn't open to change or to discuss anything about that. He expected total loyalty to him. How do you get through that? I mean, I finally did. He left, and it was like, ding dong, the witch is dead. The witch is, but how do you get through that? If you're in that situation, by the way, give us a call if you are, because Anne can help you with that. But how do you get through that?
Yeah, that is so tough, and such a real experience. I can kind of, I can feel that energy just coming through right now about, what that's like, and to be in that kind of environment. And I can just tell you right now, people can get away with pushing a lot of my buttons. I can be very patient, but hey, when you start messing with my friends, when you start messing with my coworkers, something in me comes out where I'm like, no, that's where I draw the line. And I think it becomes a decision at some point. So, one is, realistic question. Can I afford to lose this job? And is there another one I could get? Or, how critical is my financial situation? Are we at emergency level? Do you have to cope? And if you do, then finding some steps to do that would be one conversation. And then there's also, what are your options? Obviously, you probably tried talking to him. He probably didn't listen. Is that right?
I had a tough time talking to him because he was one of the type of guys that was very closed, and it was, I'm always right. Speaking of which, we were talking about that, and this is my restaurant, and you'll do it the way that I want you to do it. And his assumption was that I didn't know as much as he, but the problem was I'd been a general manager before. And so I knew as my own style, which is different than his, but he wasn't allowing me to vent it or talk about it or to initiate any change of any kind. So then I had to go to the employees who would come to me and excuse the expression, bitch about him. And I'd have to say, well, you have to understand he's this. And I'd have to make up some sort of story that made no sense to anybody, including myself.
No, I hate that. And it's really interesting you brought this up because I actually had a very similar experience this year in my own life, which was a collaborative business opportunity to come in and support someone who was fairly known, who had a large established business, and who wanted to bring in some of my assets and abilities into that picture. And it had a great financial opportunity. There was a lot going for it. But after a few months of participating in that, I just realized that, one, people in the team weren't being treated fairly. They weren't being treated with respect. I don't mean you have to, like, just shuffle around and never look people in the eyes and just be like, oh dear, afraid of everyone. I mean, people were asked rudely to do things. They were told to do things, let's put it that way, instead of asked to do things. They were yelled at legitimately, for the smallest things. And it was one thing when it was the team or me, and you know how you kind of push back against that gut instinct. You're like, I know this just isn't right, but you're like, yeah, but the opportunity is really good. But then later it came to the clients. And when the clients started being, told one thing and say they were being sold one thing and then delivered something else, and the prices were changing. And, in my opinion, it was just very unethical. It's a matter of opinion, but for me, I was like, I have a really high standard for people and customer service, and I really care about people. And I can't put my name on this business when I feel like people are being treated like that. And it was really hard to pull away because I had a lot invested in time and emotionally and financially. And I walked away. I said, that's it. I can't, and it was huge. I was depressed for about a month at least, like really down, because when you feel like this is just going to be one of those super duper win-win situations. And then underneath, you kind of start seeing the cockroaches under the stove in the restaurant, and you're like, I don't know. I don't think so.
It's interesting that you mentioned restaurants again, but I have a rule. If I go out to lunch with somebody who is supposed to be a spiritual person, a person who talks about life in one way, that likes to get up in front of people and say certain things, and then we're having lunch and they treat the waiter like crap or the waitress like crap, I won't abide that. And then I know that they're not being genuine. And because in my world, you need to support the least among us. Not that a waiter is anything less, because they're serving us and they're doing a great service to us. We should treat them with respect and treat them like we really care for their welfare and what's going on. And he just was inherently rude, and so I quit.
Yeah.
And he sued me and all that, all that happy stuff. But it's just, there are points in time when you need to take a stand for what you believe in.
I think so too, and realizing, anyone who thinks they're above someone else, I don't care what side of the table you're on, it's an exchange. That all it is. It's an exchange of goods and services. And now we use money, and we used to trade other things. It doesn't mean that anyone is better or worse. It just is how you respect someone. When I see people talk down to other people, it makes me so angry. And I'm that kind of person that I get myself in trouble too. Too. I'll be like, that is just not cool. Or later, I won't embarrass the other person, the third party anymore. And later I'll say, listen, that was so uncool. And they're like, what? I didn't do anything. What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. Everybody does that. And I'm like, actually, they don't, and I don't. And I don't really want to be seen with someone who does, because if you are not, Kevin, as you always say, we are one. Yes. When you are damaging or unkind to anyone else, you are hurting yourself. And if you don't see where that connects the dots, that's for discussion for another day. But just believe me, you are. There's a million different things you could call it, from good citizenship to karma to just having life, living in your joy. People that don't respect other human beings in their environment don't live in their joy. They live in their ego.
That is true. What is the difference between ego and joy?
Ego and joy. Wow, that's a good question.
I know. I finally came up with one.
Some people get a lot of happiness out of their ego, but we've already talked about how much that can fluctuate, right? Because it's a power trip. A power trip is ego. First of all, we all have one. I have one, you have one, everyone has one. But it's how we use it or abuse it, really, right? There's nothing wrong with having a positive self-image. In fact, I teach people how to have a more positive self-image. But having a self-image that somehow makes you now a Greek god over all the rest of us, that's where the problems start to come in.
Yes, it does. It really does. Go ahead.
And you really can't have, again, you can have the happiness, you can have even like almost an endorphin chemical high. People who are, people who have huge egos, people who are, well, there's a lot of people out there in our world that have overinflated opinions of themselves. They may get a high out of it, but do they have peace inside? Do they have, because I think that joy is also kind of that peacefulness. It's that oneness. It's that oneness with nature. It's that oneness with your fellow human beings. It's that oneness with yourself. Can you look yourself in the eye and feel like you are doing your job in the world and contributing to the whole, not just self-serving. Some people might say it brings them joy, but I would say it's almost always short-lived.
I truly believe that you bring yourself joy. Mm-hmm. And it's how you live. I'll give you an example. I, at one time, was a national sales manager for a major poultry company and traveled all over the United States. I talked to vice presidents. I had this great little credit card that I could throw on the table and say, the drinks are on me and stuff. And I felt it was a real ego boosting kind of thing. I spent the last 12 years before I started doing this as a bus driver for King County Metro. Now, that is the epitome of the difference than talking to vice presidents. Now I had people that were homeless telling me what for and stuff. So, but I still maintained a level of joy because I thought it was funny for one, but it's how you treat everyone, how you treat your world around you and what's happening around you. You can make it work, but a lot of times, and it takes people like you to help us through it because we've got so much gunk in the system that we need to clean it out a little bit.
Got some gunk in the gears, yeah.
Gunk in the gears, and we're not functioning very well.
Yeah, right. No, and that's so true, and that's why I think any conversation around emotional wellness is so important. And the pandemic really showed the corporate world for the first time. Truly, there were companies who were aware and practicing good health and habits and training for their people around emotional wellness before, but it became so much more mainstream. The idea of how important your mental and whole person outlook on life was. And when you're suddenly isolated and didn't have support, this is actually a thing. And what they never realized was that it was always a thing. People were just, people suffer in silence too in an office full of people as much as they struggle with, their own challenges or demons, if you want to call them, when they're at home working alone. So it's a great conversation that has opened up so many more opportunities. In the 80s and 90s, everything was about physical fitness, and that was the great, transition, the great upgrade, and offices started putting gyms in their companies. And
I remember that. Yeah.
And I remember when my dad first said, they put a gym in our office, and we're like, what? Why? And then mental wellness, over the years has become more and more of a very important topic, and still continues to be. And now emotional wellness. And I would say, and this is not for today's discussion, but I would say a piece of emotional wellness that I hope will start a new conversation in future years is spiritual wellness. And by that, I mean, what is spirituality to people that may not necessarily be defined as religion, but what is that aspect of the human being that has a need beyond just, their basic needs, basic happiness? What is that piece? And when will it be safe to talk about it again? Because I think it plays a role in emotional wellness.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I know that you get a lot of people that come into your practice. And by the way, before I go there, I just want to ask you real quick. It must, because you've been doing emotional wellness and working with businesses for a while, it must have done your heart good to see this switch kind of come about, because people, and then the great resignation that happened, and people decided we're not happy. And I'm leaving and stuff. There's plenty of jobs. I'm going to go find something I like to do, and stuff like that. So did that make your heart feel good?
You know what made me feel really good? One was the awareness that was coming up, which I felt like, as I just articulated, which was amazing. I just thought, we were given an unwanted opportunity with the pandemic as a whole experience to really self-evaluate, like people hadn't done in a really long time. Most people don't just wake up in the morning and say, am I really happy? Am I really happy in my job? Or they don't do it every day. And this gave people, some people had to quit working entirely for a while, and they started realizing, I used to have hobbies. I used to have friends. I used to do stuff and travel and not be a slave to, my business phone. And golly, this is pretty nice. I forgot what it was like to have a life, or just prioritizing. So people, for the first time in a long time, really taking a good, as a whole, almost as, as a national movement or a global movement, taking stock of, where am I in my life, in my vision? And is this really where I want to be? And there were a lot of people who were saying, it's not so much about the money as I thought. I'm happy to take a lesser job doing something else to have my life back and to get my joy back. And they made that choice. And I thought that was courageous and really did make me happy.
Boy, I tell you, and you just said it, because I'm sure this happens to you all the time, where people come to you and say, and I don't, is this all there is? There has to be more. This can't be all there is. And why am I really here? And those are both physical questions, and they're also very spiritual questions. Mm-hmm. Because why am I really here? What am I destined to do? And what impact, what positive impact am I going to make in the world? And do you have a lot of people that come to you with that?
Not so much as you would think, like right out of the gate, but I think we all have these same existential questions. Okay, we need a whole nother hour for that, Kevin, because now that would be a bucket of fun. I can tell you right now.
Will you come back and we can have that talk?
I will.
Awesome.
That would be a whopper, that's for sure. Yeah, but I think that is kind of what it comes down to, because that's another thing that people really started realizing was, for many people, they started realizing that they hadn't had time to give back in a long time, to volunteer, to be involved in their communities, to spend more time with their kids. And they just started realizing, giving back, being a useful part of society that was more than just part of the economy, more than just one more gear in the machine, is really fulfilling. And I feel like that actually brings me joy, and I feel like a more whole human being because of it. So people started looking again at vision and purpose in a way that many people hadn't for a long time. I mean, people have been talking about that in, corporate seminars, and it's out there, it's in the conversation, but more wholesale. What is really my vision and purpose? And even if we don't get all the way into the existential question, what do I want with my life? And what kind of quality of life do I want in my heart and emotionally, as opposed to just what brand of car I drive?
Have people changed over time? Because I seem to think that we are a little bit more, actually a lot more connected to who we are and what we choose to do. It's like, I had a conversation with my father before he passed. He was an executive with Nordstrom's for like 35 years. And I said, so what's your passion? And he said, what? I said, what's your passion? I don't know that I have one. And I said, well, don't you want to do something? And he said, look, I'm just a one-trick pony. I just go to work and I come home and I watch football on the weekends. And that's all I can do. We've changed. Is that our natural evolution, or is it that the society has changed and opened up?
I think we live in an enormously privileged society. And in this place, I don't specifically mean economically. To be able to have free speech, free thinking, to have the luxury to spend focus in the 21st century around things like emotional wellness and feelings and your or my version of spirituality is a luxury that most people in world history and many people on the planet still don't have. I mean, survival has been the name of the game for so long. And, even in the 20th century, survival was still, we went through the Depression, the first one. People were just recovering from that. And then we had World War. And then people were just, recovering from that. And then we have, Korea and Vietnam. And there was always, a lot of anxiety, a lot of, after World War II, we got to get ahead. We have to demonstrate that we're not like, again, more ego trips here, the working class way down low. We don't wear overalls to work. We wear a blazer to work, and that makes me a better person than someone else. And now I need a little 1950s housewife to go with it, and I need my little square box in a subdivision, and I need the right car. And, people just started getting, kind of coming out of survival mentality into more of appearance. It's the great emerging of what we used to call the middle class, right? Which was a phenomenon in the 20th century. Well, I have like history degrees. I can't help myself. Anyway, the 20th century, not just from aristocracy and poverty, but then like one level up, the middle class and the evolution of that. And now, but even the middle class still had a lot of pressure to perform, to show up, how they looked, how much money. And now we live in a level of comfort, at least in our developed countries, which may not always be contributing to some of these other countries in the world that are, supplying us with all of this consumerism stuff that we buy, right? But we have a great opportunity to be thinkers and learners and investigate the finer things. I go back to, thinking coming out of these very violent times, 500, 400 BC, and then you have the emerging Greek Empire, and then later the emerging Roman Empire, both which were very violent, by the way. But they became stable in a certain way where in that time, the upper class was able to, famous Greek Forum, Roman Forum, they were able to exchange ideas and investigate and become more scientific in their way of living. And some of our great thinkers of all time came from those periods. So we're in that beautiful period where we have this opportunity to make the world a better place, not just for ourselves, but for society as a whole. And if that doesn't give you motivation or vision or purpose, you can always just be self-serving.
And you can be, and you're allowed to be if that's what you choose to do. It's not joyful. And it's not as, I was talking when I was bus driving, we had some people that had come from other countries. One of my friends came from Kenya, and his father was the chief of the village, and the women of the village would wake up every day. This is the difference between that we don't understand in this country unless you've gone somewhere else. The women of the village would get up in the morning and they'd grab these pots and they would walk 6 miles to go get water and then bring the water back. And that was part of their day. But they found joy in it. And when the men one time said, I think that we're going to help our women because it's a lot of work to take all that water. And the women said, what are you doing? You go do what you're doing. This is our time to bond and to get together while we are taking this walk to go get water and stuff like that. So it's all a matter of perspective, but they still had to walk 6 miles to get water, which is hard for any human.
Very hard work, but it's such a great illustration of, and they probably didn't have medical coverage and they probably didn't have a pension. I know exactly. Right. So, but the point is some of the happiest people on this earth that I have met, many of which in developing countries in very simple circumstances, have been some of the happiest, most generous people I've ever met in my life. I always, in recent years, I was in Morocco a couple of years ago, and we were just on the side of a highway in the middle of nowhere, literally. And there was a watermelon vendor. He had a little lean-to built right on the side of I might say highway, 2-lane highway, right next to his watermelon field. And you could come in, he'd cut the watermelon for you. You could sit down on his cushions, and he didn't speak a word of English, and I didn't speak Arabic, although one person with us did. And just the joy he had making our friendship without even having words and sharing his watermelon. And it was just like, you look at that and, you could tell maybe he hadn't had perfect dentistry, but he was happy. I'm like, I know a lot of people with perfect dentistry who are miserable. So what is it that we can do to simplify? It doesn't mean we have to get rid of everything and go back to, more of a dark ages mentality. What can we do to simplify our life and put less pressure on our own performance so we can enjoy living? That's where joy starts coming out.
And that's why we're here, is to enjoy living.
And help others enjoy living.
Exactly. Well, but this gentleman that worked for King County Metro, and he would send $200 home a month for his mom. And that put her into an economic status that she could have now afford to have a housekeeper and a cook on $200 a month, because the things are just completely different there. But she was joyful to get it, and her people, her cook and her housekeeper were joyful to have it, have the job that they had. So it's all a matter of perspective. And I just wish that everybody could be that, could live in more joy in just living life, but we get caught up in it. How do you unwind all that?
No, it's really hard. There's the whole stuff problem, which is too much stuff. It takes all our attention, and we can't focus on just the simple things. I've moved repeatedly in the last few years, and I'll tell you, as stressful as it was, the personal life exfoliation that caused of getting rid of stuff was actually really amazing. And then on my most recent move, I was in an area where I didn't really need a car, and so I ended up selling a car and simplifying, and now I've been lived for 2 years without a car. Now we have one car in the family, so that has to do, but I take it on as a personal challenge, like how simply can you live, and hey guys, you know how nice it is not to have a car payment?
Or insurance.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So mostly I just was dragging my feet this whole time, and I kept thinking, I really need one. Like, I'll wait till it becomes pressing. Well, I'm sure I will still get one, but I'm happy that I could say I did 2 years without my own personal vehicle. And it's amazing how well life went. We have this idea that just the more we have, it somehow makes life easier. Also, there was a time in my life where I had a very large home and was living, a very comfortable lifestyle. It was so much work. All you ever worried about was entertaining people and then cleaning up after 50 people. And then you had to hire help to come in and do that. And it was literally just so much on my mind. I was more peaceful when I moved into, a tiny condo in Santa Monica that was like 750 square feet than I'd been in that 4,000 square foot house. So you see, there's really, find your joy for you. Everyone's different.
You can only be in one room at a time. I don't know if people recognize that it's not physically possible for you to be in more than one room at a time. And so whatever room you're in, be happy there.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with things and the benefit of our labors and being blessed. That is not, it's not wrong. All I say is, do your toys and all your badges of status, are they giving you peace and joy, or are they making you stressed and keeping your mind busy and unable to focus on some of the things that matter more? That's the question to ask yourself, and that's where you can start finding your own joy again.
Now, did you ever listen to the Gospel According to George Carlin?
I don't think I ever did.
Yes, he had a skit that he did that was called Stuff. You get stuff, you get a house, and then you fill it up with stuff, and then you get more stuff, and then you have to get a bigger house to put your stuff in it, and then you fill that up, and then you have to put it in the garage, and then you can't put your car in the garage because your stuff is in the garage. And so
That's perfect, actually. That's a perfect illustration, right?
Exactly. By the way, we're talking with Anne Scottlin. You are just adorable. I just love talking to you. And
always a pleasure, Kevin. I always get so excited when I know I get to talk to you.
This is so much fun. And if you want to get a hold of Anne, you can go to annescottlin.com. and she's got a bunch of programs out there, and she's got some things happening this fall. What's happening this fall?
So this fall, I'm launching a new coaching program. This is me individual one, which I haven't done for a while, and a very special one-on-one focused program for setting goals, emotional wellness, mental reset, professional, accelerating your professional life. It's not about the little pieces of your job. It's not business consulting. It's more, how can you maximize the life you have now for your joy, but also just for whatever your goals are, your vision. So, and there's going to be a new page coming out on my website next week. And also, if you're just listening, my name is spelled L-I-N at the end. So it's Scottlin, not the country. So Anne, A-N-N-E, Scottlin.com. Check it out. And if you'd like to check out my free Joy Journal, which is a beautiful color 7-day journal that'll give you a simple question in the morning and night to kind of create awareness around your joy and what's taking it and what's giving it, that's AnneScottlin.com/joy journal.
And Anne, I've got just a couple of minutes left in the show, and I'm going to set myself aside here, and I would like you to think deeply into your heart, and I want you to tell the people that are listening to this broadcast today, and those that will be listening to it as a podcast on positivetalkradio.net and YouTube and all that other stuff, tell them whatever you would like them to know.
If you have anyone in your life that you love, and you know what that feels like, to care about them, to love them, to be kind to them, learn to love and be kind to yourself. Because you clearly already know how to do it for someone else, but it's okay to do it for yourself. And the amount of healing and health and joy of just being more loving and patient with ourselves instead of constantly being our worst enemy and our greatest critic can create so much healing in your life and bring you so much joy. And when you have more joy, those people around you can experience more joy too.
That was perfectly said. And I want to thank you again for being here. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio, and that's Anne Scottlin, L-I-N at the end. Thank you for being here. And by the way, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got. We'll see you next time.